First and foremost, I just want to say happy Thanksgiving to all of those who celebrate. May you guys have a great holiday with your friends and family. I want to make a video talking about a massive mistake that AEW made. And if you follow me on Twitter, then you would know exactly what I feel here. I didn't do a review of AEW Dynamite this past week, but I actually tweeted about it. There was a lot of things I liked from this episode following Full Gear. Obviously, there were some things I don't like, but there was one thing that I didn't like in particular that I feel like will be very costly to AEW. I don't know when this video will go out, so hopefully at this point in time, it's either on Thanksgiving or the day after or whatever it may be. But I just hope that you guys can sit here and watch it and just understand exactly what it is that I feel, because Mercedes Moné and Camille might be the worst idea that AEW has ever had. And I'm not saying this to be negative towards AEW, but this is a concern that I've had in years past when it comes to creating stars and just like capitalizing off momentum. And this was something that didn't really start with any momentum whatsoever. And I think it's largely due to their booking decisions. Now, again, I thought AEW last night was actually pretty damn solid. Like, there were some things I like. I'm a very big fan of the Continental Classic. Honestly, the two things I really didn't care about, honestly, was just for those who actually care. I did not care for Chris Jericho and Ishii, which I just don't care about the ROH stuff on AEW television in general. Obviously, the crowd didn't care about it either because they were relatively quiet. And I didn't care about Camille and Mercedes. Now, basically, here's the thing. Mercedes just came off of a big win at AEW Full Gear. And in that match, Chris Statlander looked absolutely incredible. I think for those who might be sleeping on her, maybe they don't know the kind of direction that she should go, she is somebody that's going to be a very big star in AEW if they capitalize off of it correctly. But what's really interesting is that Mercedes Moné was about to fire Camille, and Camille actually stopped her from speaking and says that she quit. That's not the booking decision that is messed up. That's not the mistake. The mistake is how we got there. The mistake is the booking and the buildup to that moment, because Camille and Mercedes never really was booked as a incredibly strong act. And I don't know why that may be the case. I don't know what AEW's original intention was. But when they first came out with this idea that Camille would be associated with Mercedes Moné, I actually thought that was a good idea. Obviously, it was very copy and paste from the Toni Storm and Mariah May situation. They were just kind of like redoing the storyline where somebody's going to turn on the other person. I think that was very predictable and very obvious from the beginning. But Camille was somebody who did amazing things in NWA. She signed to AEW and she never debuted for months. She finally made her debut as the bodyguard for Mercedes. And something about this from day one just never clicked. It never worked. And in fact, I don't think AEW booked Camille in a way that actually presented her as a star. And I think that was one of the biggest issues with this particular storyline. They never really presented Camille as a big deal, which is really odd considering how big Camille was going into AEW. Camille was a free agent that was sought out after by the WWE, by TNA, by other organizations, including AEW. AEW won the bid, and for months and months and months, they didn't have a plan for her. They finally had a plan, and it just didn't click. It didn't work. Now, unfortunately, one of the big issues that AEW has had in the past, and I've used examples several times on this channel, it is very easy to find, but AEW sometimes has a hard time developing stars. Sometimes they have a hard time capitalizing off someone's momentum. Camille was built up as a powerhouse in NWA. Obviously, the AEW audience was very aware of that. The pro wrestling audience, the internet wrestling community was very aware of that. When she came in with Mercedes, there was a lot of times where Camille was kind of looking weak. And it didn't really make sense for them to do that because Camille should have been the reason why Mercedes kept winning, especially because Mercedes is like this egotistical heel, but she's getting beat down. Like, it just didn't look good, okay? And I think this is one of the biggest issues that AEW had with this storyline is from the initial start, it seemed like it could be a really good idea, and then immediately what happened after the follow-up was just simply not good. Now, I am not saying that Camille's career in AEW is over, but clearly this is going to take a lot of time to repair, rebuild, and rehabilitate. And I think it is very difficult to do that once you have already made somebody look incredibly weak, especially when they shouldn't be looking weak at all. And perception is reality. So when you see Camille getting beat down, when you see that she is not having squash matches and stuff, I think that hurts people's perception of her. And I'm not saying that AEW has to constantly do squash matches, but I think they should sometimes. I think it would have been very advantageous for Camille to join Mercedes, get a couple squash matches every week. Honestly, build it up for a while and then allow her to kind of build this like reputation as somebody who is eyeing Mercedes Moné's title reign. And they didn't do that. And I think one of the big things here that AEW can learn from is that when you have somebody with tons of momentum and you have somebody who is as powerful and talented and you know, she's obviously got a fan base and stuff. I think when you have somebody in that situation, you just have to book her correctly. You cannot make her look weak. And the minute that you make her look weak, it basically throws things off. Because here's the thing, Mercedes won her match against Chris Statlander, but this entire time Camille has looked weak. Why would Mercedes Moné want Camille as her bodyguard? And I think that's why it's going to be very difficult for them to rehabilitate the character. Now, I put this out on a tweet, and I've seen a lot of people say AEW doesn't give a shit about Camille because of her politics, because of social media, because of things like that. And I don't know what the case is, but fans are all of a sudden turning on her. And listen, like, I'm judging the pro wrestling product. I don't care about their political views. I don't care about, you know, those types of things. I don't pay attention to their real life. I pay attention to the way they're booked on TV. Camille is talented. She could go in the ring. And this segment where she quits on Mercedes, it felt like there was no heat to this particular segment. And unfortunately, we live in a situation where, like, we live in a time where if something doesn't come across good on TV, fans notice and they're quiet and they just don't care and they don't respond well to it. And it's really hard to get fans bought back into it. And again, it's not impossible, but I think AEW just completely missed the boat here. And it's interesting because like Kyle Fletcher, for example, came into the company, never necessarily looked weak. He always looked good, but it was the way that he was booked that allowed him to, when he finally beat Will Ospreay, it finally put him in a position where it's like, holy shit, we just built a new star, which I firmly believe the booking of Kyle Fletcher has been incredible. And in a weird way, Kyle Fletcher has always played second fiddle to Will Ospreay, obviously due to United Empire. So because of that, I look at this as like it's not that AEW can't do it at all because they've done it at certain times, but there's been many times in the company where they've missed the boat. This one is a very big thing that they missed. It was a very big mistake, largely due to the fact that AEW had potentially a top star in their women's division. And it wasn't Mercedes. It's not Becky Lynch. It's not Charlotte Flair. It's somebody that was built with a little recognition outside of AEW, came into AEW, and immediately people were excited for her going to AEW because they added Deonna Purrazzo, they added Taya Valkyrie, they added so many pieces to the women's division. They're like, okay, this is another great addition. But in reality, the booking does not dictate that. It doesn't indicate that it was a strong booking decision or a strong signing, which is so weird. Like, it was a very weird situation, you know, and I'm not trying to argue this, but you see Ricochet leave WWE, come to AEW, and he's already losing. You see Camille come in from NWA, come into AEW, and this is the response fans are giving. Yeah, there's clearly an issue there, and I just don't want to ignore that. I think Camille has the skills and power to rebound, but it's entirely up to AEW how they go about it. And I genuinely don't know how they will go about it. I'm hopeful that they will do it the right way, but clearly putting them together just simply did not work. It was never going to work, and it's a very big mistake. I think Camille should have came in. They should have built her up through a series of squash matches each week, cutting promos. Aligning with Mercedes would have been completely fine, but the way they booked her after joining Mercedes, it was very short-lived. It obviously didn't work out, and that's the difference. You got to do things differently, and it's unfortunate. It is what it is. But I want to know what you guys think down below. Altogether, a great episode of AEW Dynamite. Again, just a couple things I didn't like. That was one of them. And I think that's a very massive mistake.